Hello, my crafty friends. It's Stacy of Stacy Creates Stuff, and today we're finally going to talk about knitting. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I am Stacy of Stacy Creates Stuff, and I am a designer, crafter, and fiber artist, bringing you, well, lots of creative stuff. I love to make things. I love to design things. I just love all the things fiber arts and crafty. So today I am finally going to talk about knitting. Now, knitting is a craft that I have been doing for 50 years. Yes, that's 50, not 15. 50 years. And my level of enthusiasm for knitting has varied over those years. Sometimes I am all in on knitting, and sometimes no. However, I am more of a process knitter than a project knitter. So let's talk about that for a moment. If you're like, well, what the heck are you even talking about? Well, it's quite simple. I love the process of knitting. I like to make the stitches. I like to experiment with different stitches. I like to learn new stitches. But I'm less enthused about actually making something. Now, many of you might be project knitters. You start your knitting and you have a project in mind and you go until you finish that. And maybe you have a couple of projects going at a time, but definitely the end result is a project. No, not so for me. So what does a process knitter do? Because eventually you either have a whole lot of single socks, unfinished sweaters, maybe a few hats and half of a scarf before, you get bored and you want to move on to something else. But what can a process knitter do in order to stay satiated by knitting? I'm going to show you. You make a lot of swatches. Now, these are not gauge swatches. I'm not trying to see if my knitting fits within a certain framework of number of stitches per inch, in heights and rows. Oh no, these are stitch swatches based on Barbara Walker's A Treasury of Knitting Patterns. This is volume 1 of a 4-volume set. And you can see I have a lot of pages marked there, lots of notes and things on the side, but I had been making my way through the book, knitting every single one of these stitches in here. And there is only one that I ultimately skipped because I couldn't get it to work. Shall we take a look? Let's. All right, the first box I have here, this is just one of those lovely boxes from Michael's that, it's like scrapbook paper box. I think it's like 12 by 12. I use these boxes for so many things, including my quilting projects. But in this case, of course, it's knitting projects. And I just made some cardboard dividers so that I could have columns of swatches in there. And I took each one, and I'm just going to grab one here. This is basket weave. And let's see if we can get that to focus here. These are great. Here's the back side of it. So I knit a little swatch depending on the number of stitches that it calls for. I try to do at least 2, if not 3 repeats. And when it is all said and done, I tuck it inside of a little card. Now, for a while, I was also keeping a spreadsheet where I would write down the name of the pattern, what section of the book it was in, because this volume is broken down into simple knit purl combinations, ribbings, color change, slip stitch patterns, twist stitch, fancy texture, patterns made with yarn over stitches, eyelet patterns, lace, cables, and more cable stitch patterns. So I had it broken down, and I have been trying to use a different color yarn for each chapter of the book. That also helps me to visually prepare it. But anyway, getting back to the spreadsheet, I wrote down the name of the pattern, what section it was in, what stitches were used. Was it just knits and purls? Were there yarn overs, knitting two together, whatever kind of thing, and what I thought it would be good for. Also things like, is it reversible? Does the backside look as interesting as the front side? Because, for a scarf, that's a bonus. All those types of things. Oh, I think this would be good for a hat. This would be good for a baby blanket. This would be great for an interesting section of a sweater. Mind you, I'm probably not going to actually knit any of those items anytime soon, but I really like playing with the stitches. Now, it got to a point where I wasn't keeping up with the spreadsheet quite as much, so we'll see. And I haven't really touched this project in probably a couple of years. There were a few months where I had a Twitch channel, and I was going through, spending about 2 or 3 hours a day, one day a week, working on knitting up swatches, and I would explain what I was doing and so forth. So I am planning to do some tutorials on various types of stitches, like ones that are reversible, so that you can easily, use them for items that are reversible, like scarves. But I have had a lot of fun, and I have learned a lot. Now, again, I have been knitting for decades, and consider myself an advanced knitter, not afraid to tackle any kind of project. And again, only one pattern has stumped me in this entire book. Otherwise, I have made it through. But I've gotten to experiment with different things, and I've become better versed in certain decreases and increasing ways, how they would do it. Why is that stitch using that particular increase or decrease? What if I did a different one? How would that affect the stitch? All those types of things. That is what excites me about knitting, them kind of the mechanics behind it. So I just thought I would give you a little montage of some of the swatches that I've done. I have put them in, let's see, it looks like I alphabetize them within the box that they are in, or I think I alphabetize them by chapter. So all of the chapters together, and then those stitches are alphabetized. It's easier to find it if I need to reference it for something. Someday I might knit something other than a swatch. So let's take a look. So there you have it, my friends. 3 1/3 containers of stitch swatches. Let me know in the comments below if knitting tutorials are something you would be interested in. Of course, it would be about making certain kinds of stitches rather than like how to knit a hat or a scarf or any kind of thing. It's all about how to do a certain stitch, or how to do several stitches that are reversible or that would be good for adding texture or to spice up a pattern. Anyway, you just let me know and I will be happy to accommodate you. So I know we have some knitters in our midst. You can join my email list, link is in the description below, and check off that you are interested in knitting. And we'll see. This channel will not be coming all knit all the time. I'm still devoted to my quilting and also embroidery and cross stitch. Also, I'd like to get into lace making, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, I like to explore all different crafts. So if you are interested in learning knitting stitches in particular, let me know, and we'll see how frequently I can pepper that into my lineup of videos. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had as much fun looking at some of the little swatches that I have made as I did revisiting them. Makes me want to get out my knitting needles and figure out where I left off in the book. So if you are looking for more creative tutorials, check out this, and I'll see you next time.